Hello and welcome back to the Cocked Dice. In this week's conversion video, I'm going to tackle a chapter I've been meaning to for absolutely ages. It's the Sons of Fulgrim. Sorry, Sons of the Phoenix. This Imperial Fist successor has a cracking look to it. We're going to go for a fairly ornate armour set, so it's going to be a bit of a challenge tackling this on a Primaris Marine because they're quite clean. So I've raided my bits box for anything like this sort of bit from a Blood Angel, this cracking piece from Blood Bowl, one of the new Blood Bowl kits, bits from Stormcast Eternals, and anything else I can find to make them look cool. As this chapter's fairly combat focused, I really wanted to bring over some of the aesthetic of the Emperor's Children from the Horus Heresy range, and I found these really cracking kind of beautiful curved blades from one of the Warcry kits. Cypher Lords, that's the name of them. I've used one of their blades before on my White Scars chapter, and this is a pair of slightly smaller, slightly thinner blades, which I'm going to give them a pair, I think, for this. So before we stick this guy together, we've got a couple of little jobs to do. I'll start with the easiest one first. First one is we need to take this bolt pistol off, because we want to give him a pair of combat blades, which is going to cut around his hand, just behind the ammo clip of the, I'm involving my tables and chronic here, ammo clip of the pistol, and then straight across the top of my hand, my sturdier knife for this, through like that. And then of course, because we're adding a knife blade to him, we can remove the butt of the pistol down here. You may find you need to carve a little bit into the hand and just create some fingers for him, especially around where his trigger finger and the trigger guard were. So I'll pop that to one side. On the other arm, I want to swap this arm out. I don't want the Indominus symbol, and I don't like the pose. I want to bring this away from the body. So I'm going to swap this arm in for a different one, but we'll keep the shoulder because these Assault Intercessor shoulders are pretty awesome. So all we need to do here is cut directly across underneath the shoulder pad. So nice clean cut, straight across following the line of the shoulder pad. And if it's not completely level at the bottom, just take your knife afterwards and just work across, slicing down any excess material. Next up, we're back to the main body. I want to replace his chest eagle with the rather more fancy eagle that's coming from the Blood Bowl kit. So as I've done before, we're going to cut off this chest eagle, and we just want to cut it back to this outer plate here. So just take your knife and in very thin layers, just start stripping off this eagle. Don't press too hard, because if you catch the neck guard too often, you will mark it, and it does make a bit of a mess. We want to keep this nice and clean. So just thin layers, and then either sand it down or scrape it down with your knife blade. And finally, probably the most complicated bit of this conversion, I want to swap his knee pad out for this Sister of Silence shoulder pad. Now, as you can see there, it is broadly the same size. So we're going to essentially cut diagonally in that way, and then down that way to about halfway through his knee, and then try and fit this on. Now I am going to have to cut a little bit of the actual lower leg part here. So we're just going to go in fairly carefully. I think I'll strip the knee down first, because we don't need this. This just helps get rid of the curve to make any cutting that we do inwards a little less prone to slippage. So we want it to go in around about like that. So you can see where I'm going to have to cut, just above that purity seal there. So we can start to see where it's going to fit. I'm going to carry on cutting this back, and I'll be back in a minute once I've got it done. Now, as you can see from the knee, there is a bit of a void behind there. If you trim it more carefully in a V shape as well, it gets a bit complicated. So I decided not to. So what we're going to use is a little ball of green stuff to settle this on. Take the new knee pad. Now we just need to make sure the green stuff stays inside it. I'm just going to push it in until it fits as far back as it can. Then any green stuff that's sort of squeezed out around the edges, just take your tool and we're just going to push it back in, tidy up around the edges a little bit, and then just check from the front and make sure the centre of the knee pad is broadly lined up with the centre of the leg and is pointing in the same direction. So he's going to need a bit of time just to settle off there. We're going to have to be a bit careful around that knee pad, make sure we don't catch it too often. So I'm going to move on to some of the other bits of this model. Now, because I want to change the angle of this hand very slightly, we're going to make a cut just behind the wrist guard, straight through, keeping it level all the way across. There we go, like that. You want a nice even cut all the way around there. We only want to do that if we want to twist his hand round a little bit on the way out. We'll just pop his shoulder on here, put it back on again and twist it round so it's facing outwards just a little bit. So rather than being, it was twisted in like that originally, just twisting it outwards because it'll look cooler when he's got a sword in it. So we'll move swiftly on to the sword. Now, while this blade is upside down, it isn't going to matter in a minute. We're going to chop it off this hand here. I have a bigger knife for this, it's just a bit easier. So cut straight beneath the hilt of the sword, and then just round the back where it's attached to the wrist a little bit, just very carefully trim it. Don't press too hard so it fires off. Then we also want the bottom of the handle here, so again, just hold it down so it doesn't ping off and just cut through. Now these are pretty thin and may well escape across the table if you ping it too much and you're using it for gameplay. So you may want to pin these onto the model. I'm not going to tonight. What you could do on the bottom half is just drill a small 2mm hole into the bottom of his hand, just to stick that in 1mm or 2 and give it a slightly stronger attachment point. For the top part, as long as this bit here underneath the hilt is really level, that should sit on his hand with no problems. So when you're placing the sword on, just make sure the sword is following the line of his hand, otherwise it'll look really odd. There we go, that's starting to come on quite nicely now. So what should we do next? We'll finish off the chest while we're here, and then he can wait to dry. So this is from one of the new Blood Bowl 2020, 20, was it this year or last year? Last year, I think. It's one of the new linemen, the really fancy kind of lineman, and it is around about the same size as a Space Marine's chest. And I want to place it on it, leaning up onto the neck guard of the Space Marine, because otherwise it's going to get in the way of his arms. So his arms want to kind of come underneath it. So all we really need to do is make sure it fits nice and centrally. It does there. So pop that off, and I'll pop a bit of glue in the centre of the chest there, and a tiny blob either side of his neck. Place that on there like so. So we just have to be a little careful placing this other arm on, just here, which we may as well do now, before we go and build the hand out for this one. I hope this fits. Oh, it's tight. Just about. Because it's got this rim on it, it's just catching it, so I have to be a little careful there. Always on that. So we'll get onto this hand now. So as with the other one, we're going to remove whatever's in his hand currently. In this case, it's rather generic combat blade, top and bottom. Just trim them off. And then as we're going to attach this to the other shoulder, we can cut this shoulder connector off, like so. Chuck that out of the way. And we'll just have a quick test fit. Next, we'll get this other sword arm sorted out. So just like the other one, grab your sword, take it at the hilt next to this Warcry hand. There we go. And then we'll take the bottom. We know we want to cut it a little short, so we'll cut it down to there. Get rid of that hand. Straighten it out. So I'll get it stuck on. So now he's had a little time to dry, we'll pop his head on. This is not a complicated one, it's just a matter of lining the head off. I've decided not to do anything with the helmet. I did ponder doing some sort of Grecian style helm, but opted for a standard Primaris helm, and what we're going to do is add to the top of it this rather cool plume from a Stormcast Eternal kit. You see it right on top of his head, and then just check down the centre of the model to make sure it's pointing in the right direction there. So we're getting down to the final couple of bits and pieces. We're going to add some other bits of detail to him. I might drop that. I think that we've got enough wings. Drop that. Some purity seals and other gubbins that we're going to drop on him now. So I'll just drop some extra details on and I'll be back in a minute. So there we have it. 1 Sons of the Phoenix Sergeant, all ready for melee combat. We've done a few extra bits and pieces. I've added a pistol grip going into his holster. Added a shield, band over there, a few little bits and pieces around his waist, a couple of purity seals. I'll go and get him painted, but you can see him finished coming up right now. And thanks for joining us here at the Cock Dice. Why not like this video and add a comment below? It really helps boost the channel. And while you're at it, if you click on the icon below, you can subscribe to the channel for all the latest updates as soon as they're live. Why not check out some of our other videos and playlists? You can click on the ones on screen right now. Take care, and we'll see you next time.